Hi folks, well, so it continues. Yeah, I mean, there's so much news coming in, it's difficult to even know where to begin. You know, I could be doing 3 videos a day, I think. It's crazy, you know, it's happening so quick that, you know, you can record a video and by the time you've got it uploaded, it's old news and something else major has happened. It's just crazy. But, you know, the riots in the United States are definitely a focal point now. And that seems to be interesting, don't you think, the way they've flipped that? You're not really hearing much about COVID in the news anymore. You're hearing more about the riots. But beneath that, there's all the COVID stuff still happening. And, you know, the riots are a natural progression. I mean, civil unrest is a natural progression. This is what the United States wanted. And what the government wanted, what those forces that control things wanted anyway. When I say the United States, that's a pretty vague term. But, I mean, order out of chaos, folks. Order ab chaos, that's the plan. And, you know, these riots have been so contrived and they're so set up. I mean, I showed you on the last report that I did, and other people have showed you that there's been people dropping pallets of bricks around the place, just in riot-prone areas, in riot zones.
This right here?
Yeah, they put them there.
This the setup.
They put them there on purpose,
Y'all know where we at.
You're finding these handy pallets of bricks there for you to smash things up. There was someone who actually filmed some cops dropping off a pallet of bricks, or at least unloading bricks from the back of a police car, a police wagon, and leaving on somewhere in the riot zone.
Are those fucking bricks? What the fuck are those?
Those look like bricks. Look, yeah, those are fucking bricks. What the fuck? They're collecting all of those bricks so that the protesters don't fucking use them, dude. That's what they're doing. They're doing that for undercover police officers that are getting involved in the protests so that they have an excuse to beat the shit out of people. So
that kind of blew them out that they were seeing that. We've seen police a few days ago. We saw police firing paint bombs at people simply standing on their balconies.
There's more. Look at this. They just keep coming.
Go inside! Get inside! Get inside! Get inside! Get in your house now! Let's go! Light them up! Go inside now! Get in the house!
Get in!
With Trump's speech the other day as well, before the speech was over, before the curfew was in place, you had police attacking people outside the White House, peaceful protesters. I guess they wanted the crowd to go away. They were also attacking an Australian Channel 7 news crew.
Let's go to Washington, D.C. Amelia Brace, you're outside the White House where Donald Trump is about to speak. It's getting a bit tense.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. We've just had to run about a block as police moved in. We've been fired at with rubber bullets. My cameraman has been hit. We've also seen tear gas being used. Here we go. They're moving through again. This is exactly what it looks like. Exactly what it looks like. We're just staying safely.
Oh.
Whoa. Oh.
Amelia, can you hear us?
Amelia, are you okay? Or your cameraman? Hello, Amelia. The police just charged at Amelia and our 7 News cameraman there, and looks like a policeman just punched our cameraman.
Which is interesting because they're not discriminating between protesters and the media here. Amelia, can you hear us yet?
Heard us yelling there that we were media, but they don't care. They're being indiscriminate at the moment. They chased us down that street, and as you see, they were firing these rubber bullets at everyone. There is tear gas, and now we are really surrounded by the police, and you really saw the way that they dealt with my cameraman Tim. They're quite violent, and they do not care who they're targeting at the moment. And this is exactly what I was talking about earlier, guys. So this curfew is set to come into effect in about 26 minutes' time. So the tactic of the forces is that they basically move in this big circle. So all the people get stuck in the middle, and then when that curfew comes into effect, everyone here except us, because we are media, will be effectively breaking the law. So they can be arrested, they can be cleared out of this area.
So they're kind of showing that they're not really interested in even pretending they're friendly anymore. They kind of want to set up that atmosphere. They want to put the fear into people's minds and make people realise that, no, you can't stand against the police for any reason whatsoever. You can't stand against the government for any reason whatsoever. If we tell you not to be here, you can't be here. Doesn't even matter if you're a reporter reporting what we want you to report. You still can't be here. And we're prepared to get violent with you to make you move. I mean, pretty dramatic stuff, folks, but I think a lot of this is theatre. It may surprise the news reporters that it's happening. They seemed genuinely surprised that it was happening. But I think a lot of it is theatre to put that mindset into the minds of the people that, whoa, the government's out of control. We can't go pushing against these people. And also to provoke the patriots in there into really mounting some type of major civil war in the country. They want that. That's why they've got everything in place. And like I said, underneath all this is COVID, because that's the reason for the riots to begin with. I mean, people are totally stressed out from 3 months of lockdown. So they've staged this shooting, this killing of George Floyd, in order to push it over the edge and to flip the attention into race wars and racial killing and make it all about black versus white, divide the resistance against the system. And it's happening here in Australia as well. There was an Aboriginal man, a tribal man, young tribal kid who had his legs kicked out from underneath him and was brutalised by the police. And so again, they're trying to push that racial thing here in Australia and shift attention, because we've had major protests here in Australia as well. They've been very peaceful, but they're trying to shift attention away from, what the thing is really about and get it back to where they want, which is, divide and conquer. They want to divide the masses. But these riots have been fully set up, folks. There's people out there, even the people that are protesting George Floyd, they're out there, Black Lives Matter or whatever, even that is a controlled group. But people that are genuinely out there protesting the death of George Floyd aren't violent people. There's been a black woman was filming white people spraying Black Lives Matter on the building, and she's going, hey, we don't want you to do that. You're not doing that on our behalf. And they're basically telling her to go away. This is Antifa. These are agitators that are in there to turn this into a riot, paid agitators that have been sent there, probably paid by Soros or whatever, and or whoever. I mean, there'd be a lot of people, a lot of backers behind this, folks. But they're paid in there to go and create trouble. Dan Dix was harassed by some of them because he was in there filming. I mean, Dan Dix is a truther, and he was being harassed by white women, white feminists, who were claiming they were there because Black Lives Matter. And there's Dan Dix from Press the Truth trying to report the truth, and they chased him out of the area. Pretty dramatic stuff.
Get out of here! You are a disgusting excuse for a fucking human.
What have I done?
You are a racist man. Stop filming, you fuck. Stop filming. Stop filming. Stop filming. Back the fuck up. Stop filming.
Why would I
stop filming?
Why? What have I done?
Stop filming. Black Lives Matter. Put your arm on me. Put your arm on me. Black Lives Matter. White supremacy. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter.
How do you figure I'm a Nazi? What have I done?
You're not supporting any of them. I'm not touching them either.
What have I ever said or done that makes you think I'm a Nazi?
Get out.
What have you got? What have I said or done? Why?
Get out. Either check get out of here.
You're not touching, you don't need to touch me.
That's the point. Like, what the fuck are you gaining?
Just gotta get through here.
The fuck are you gaining?
He's a real journalist.
The fuck are you gaining, bro? The fuck? No fucking point. You're a fucking piece of shit, bro. Get the fuck out.
Why again am I a piece of shit?
Fuck, dude.
White people, let's make a path
and get the police to get him out of here. White people make him hard. Okay, guys, just back up so they can get him out. Okay, back up so we can get him out. Okay, back up so we can get him out. Okay, back up so we can get him out.
It's just about keeping the peace.
Turn the camera off.
Hey, it's about keeping the peace. Fair enough? Fair enough? Can we walk out to Burrard Street, sir?
But like I said, folks, underneath all of this is the COVID situation, which is still going on, and they're using the COVID tracing to now trace rioters and protesters. And the COVID tracing is very interesting, folks, how they've worked out this whole quarantine isolation thing. You know, they've basically, there was a woman who applied for the job as a contact tracer to go and see what it was all about. And in the lecture, she basically found out that this is a way of pretty well locking down anybody they want continuously. It's a way of locking down virtually the entire population, putting them in isolation forever. That's the way the contact tracing system works. She did a video. I'll give you just a couple of little snippets of it here.
What's going to happen is once you get a test that is positive, it goes to a tracer, and that tracer is going to do some research on you, find out a little bit about you, and give you a call. Now, they're going to tell you that you tested positive and that you need to be isolated for a minimum of 10 days on the onset. And by isolation, I mean total isolation. Nobody near you, even your dog can't be there. So you cannot contact your pets, people, anybody in your family. You need to be completely isolated. Now, what that means is you could have to go into a hotel room. If you have no way of not sharing a bathroom or any space, they will check that out. So you'll have to show like video evidence if the conference is done via teleconference, walk them around your house, let them know that you have space to be isolated. Now, the next is quarantine. Quarantine means I am healthy, I have no symptoms, I have not contracted the disease, but maybe for 14 days, they're going to check to make sure that I haven't. So that means, again, that I cannot leave my house. And as a contact tracer, I'm supposed to set you up with social services. So if you have kids, have no one to care for them, we'll take your kids, we'll take care of that. If you need groceries, we'll do groceries, but you literally cannot be in contact with anybody and you cannot leave your house. Even if you're healthy, you are still quarantined not to be leaving the house. Unfortunately, you could be totally healthy, get out of quarantine, and guess what? Be at a restaurant, someone else in the vicinity has it, be quarantined again. So isolation and quarantine basically means the same thing, except quarantine is a little bit longer. If you're quarantined 14 days, what does this look like in normal time? Okay, so they're going to want to know, as a contact tracer, I call you up, I tell you you become positive. We've looked at your house, do a video conference so you can show me that you have a place to isolate. And then I'm going to ask you, who did you come in contact with? And I'm going to tell you, if you tell me, oh, I don't know, I'm going to tell you to look at your phone and we can do it together and look at your social media and we'll figure out where you have been. And you need to make sure you know your movies, flight numbers, and anything with large venues. Now, some of the places, what they've already instituted now, are you have to put your contact information when you go to a restaurant, you go to a hair salon, any of those things, because that way they can track you. But you would say, I went to this movie or I went to this restaurant. Everybody who's at that restaurant would be contacted then by the contact tracer. So let's say, unfortunately, I got it. Well, guess what? My family would have to be quarantined and they have to be completely isolated from me. Let's say I was on a train. We were all sitting on the same cabin because I was getting to work and there was 10, 15 people on that train. All of them would need to be quarantined. I had gone to work. Everybody at work would need to be quarantined. I went to a restaurant after work. All of them would need to be quarantined. This doesn't make sense to quarantine the population in terms of you could get quarantined again and again and again. Even though you're healthy and never sick, you will not be allowed to leave your house. Now, you've been hearing that this is all voluntary. And basically you can read this. Request for voluntary quarantine. This is for somebody you're the legal guardian at. It tells you to go and remain at the address by the date and time. And then I love this. It is very important that you comply with this request for voluntary quarantine. Remember, I'm not sick. Nobody's sick. Your health and the health of others depend on it. If you do not comply with this request for voluntary quarantine, we may use a detention order enforced by the police to assure your compliance. That's the strangest voluntary request I've ever received. But you can see here, if you use a court order because someone is not following, they have non-compliance, you can be incarcerated and fined up to $2,000 per day. So remember, everybody that will be quarantined will be 14 days from the last contact. And there's no minimum times. This could be indefinite. When it comes to the greater good, your privacy is null and void. As soon as you get a positive test result, this goes directly to an electronic database. The isolation or quarantine can be mandated and enforced. And there's other health enforcements such as vaccines or requirements to take medicine because you cannot risk being infected and giving it to others.
When you're tested for COVID-19, you might assume that your test result will stay confidential with your doctor and the health department. After all, that's how it usually works with medical information, but we're living in unusual times. The Associated Press has revealed that across America, there's widespread sharing of medical information between health officials and law enforcement. Denver is doing it, so's El Paso County.
It is law enforcement specific information that is only in our computer-aided dispatch.
Jacqueline Kirby is with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. She says addresses are flagged identifying homes of people who have tested positive for COVID-19.
We get sensitive information all the time. We have cautions on addresses for a myriad of reasons, and this is just an additional layer of protection for our deputies.
A threat of a communicable disease outbreak or epidemic that threatens the public health, it gives them the rights to do this. Adopt and enforce regulations requiring strict or modified isolations or quarantine for any contagious infections or communicable diseases. Measures as necessary to ascertain the nature of disease and prevent its spread. It can take control of the body of any living person or the corpse of any deceased. It can quarantine, isolate, inspect, and disinfect persons, animal, houses, rooms, and other property. So based on what we have right now, I don't have any privacy rights. But how do these apps work? Well, let me share what they're doing in India. So India released an app and they said this is a voluntary app. You do not need to download it. However, get this. In order to go anywhere, you have to have the app. So if you want to get on a plane, you have to show the app that you are not under quarantine or isolation. You want to get into work, you have to show your app. You want to get on a train, you have to show your app. So they said, oh, it's voluntary because guess what? You couldn't go back to life without downloading the app. You might have noticed this on your iPhone the other day. This showed a software update. And if you didn't see it, you might have already got the automatic update. But basically it says this allows COVID-19 contact tracing apps to work. And you may not even have known it. It was a very quick little update, but it has already come to the United States. Recently, Google and Apple just gave out some information. I thought this was great. You can kind of see here how it works, that you can see that you're close to somebody and you get a notification that, uh-oh, you need to be quarantined. You were too close. Someone had it. And then listen to this. In this second phase in the coming months, this is really interesting. They're going to use Bluetooth in the first phase, but without requiring an app to be installed. If a match is detected, the user will be notified, and if the user has not already downloaded an official public health authority app, they will be prompted to download an official app and advised on next steps. You're not going to have a choice. They're telling you it's voluntary at this point, but so was social distancing, and then we got locked down in our house. So it is not voluntary. This is happening. And you need to be aware.
But the whole thing is below, and you should go and watch this video. It's a very eye-opening video. And, you know, that's what a lot of this is being set up for. And the riots actually make it all happen, you know. And like I said, the riots are fully staged. There was reports also coming out from Brian on high-impact vlogs or high-impact flicks who was showing you protesters breaking out You know, thieves breaking out of a department store, somehow they'd been boarded in there. They're breaking out right in front of the cops. The cops did nothing. They ran straight past the cops with all this stolen clothing and everything. Rioters across the street, the cops are just standing there doing nothing. Like I said, there's been films of them even leaving pallets of bricks around the place. So this whole thing is set up for destabilization so Trump could call in the military the way he's done. And, you know, when you look at Trump's speech and you look at how he's recategorizing any protesters as potential terrorists, it's not just protester groups like Antifa. Black Lives Matter will fall into that category as well. Anything that is an organized group will fall into that category, but it's also single protesters. These are being recategorized. Any protesters can now be recategorized as terrorists, and they can be taken off to the camps.
We will succeed, 100%. We will succeed. Our country always wins. That is why I am taking immediate presidential action to stop the violence and restore security and safety in America. I am mobilizing all available federal resources, civilian and military, to stop the rioting and looting, to end the destruction and arson, and to protect the rights of law-abiding Americans, including your Second Amendment rights. Therefore, the following measures are going into effect immediately. First, we are ending the riots and lawlessness that has spread throughout our country. We will end it now. Today, I have strongly recommended to every governor to deploy the National Guard in sufficient numbers that we dominate the streets. Mayors and governors must establish an overwhelming law enforcement presence until the violence has been quelled. If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them. I am also taking swift and decisive action to protect our great capital, Washington, D.C. What happened in this city last night was a total disgrace. As we speak, I am dispatching thousands and thousands of heavily armed soldiers, military personnel, and law enforcement officers to stop the rioting, looting, vandalism, assaults, and the wanton destruction of property. We are putting everybody on warning. Our 7 o'clock curfew will be strictly enforced. Those who threaten innocent life and property will be arrested, detained, and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I want the organizers of this terror to be on notice that you will face severe criminal penalties and lengthy sentences in jail. This includes Antifa and others who are leading instigators of this violence.
There was a very revealing report by Clive Lewis from Ground Zero. Good on you, Clive. I've been on Clive's show in the past and he's doing good work. And I'm going to share it for you here because I think it's very important to see how these isolation camps are being set up. And when you tie all this in with Trump's speech, where this is really leading to.
In Washington state, which has been called Ground Zero for the COVID-19 outbreak, the state's leaders are preparing for a second round of infections with isolation camps being set up near correctional facilities and even a remote location in Goldendale, Washington. Recently, KIRO Channel 7 News in Seattle ran a report on a facility that was being set up near the Maple Lane Correctional Facility in Thurston County, which is about 22 miles from Olympia, the capital of Washington state.
At Maple Lane Corrections Facility, the state health department is already taking steps to potentially turn this into an isolation and quarantine site. They've set up 3 RVs, a white tent, and extra fencing in case more coronavirus cases pop up.
On a tip from Washington Representative Matthew Shea, we were told that in a remote area of Washington called Goldendale, there was a similar facility which certainly was quite out of the way. An isolation facility is there under lock and key. A huge gate blocks a road that leads to rows of trailers that are available to house those with COVID-19. While many isolation facilities in Washington are either on or near hospitals and correctional facilities, This site is remote, with a small airstrip to the east that can be used to fly in the infected. Can you imagine being taken from your home or taken somewhere, not knowing where you're going, and you land out here in the middle of nowhere in the country, and you're taken to a fairgrounds, an old abandoned fairgrounds where they have a watchtower. You saw the watchtower earlier. They have a little pillbox where they can watch you get admitted in and sign security papers. But so far, this is on the ready. While this facility is not considered secret, it's one of the lesser-known facilities in Washington state, and many people suspect it may house those who do not wish to comply with any lockdown rules for round 2 of the pandemic that many authorities are saying could happen now that areas are opening up again. The Klickitat County Emergency Operations Center says the facility is for first responders, healthcare workers, wildland firefighters, Klickitat County residents, and non-county residents temporarily working in the county. They claim that the service will be completely voluntary. However, with no services for miles, no cell phone service, and perhaps no cable TV, the question is why anyone would want to be housed at the facility that consists of RVs in a virtual no man's land. What is most disconcerting is that there are probably more of these camps that were first constructed for such military containment camp programs as REX-84, Cable Splicer, and Garden Plot. The details of Cable Splicer and its sister projects called Red Light and Deep Shield have been simultaneously being implemented for mass containment if needed in the middle of a state emergency. Garden Plot was actually the classified portion of the Cable Splicer program, where not only would combatants be detained, but there are also provisions for using chemical and silent direct energy weapons in order to shut down entire areas for control. If any civil disturbance by a resistance group, religious organization, or other persons considered to be nonconformists takes place, under Appendix 3 to Annex B of Plan 55-2, it hereby gives all federal forces total power over the situation if local and state authorities cannot put down said dissenters. Annex A, Section B of Operation Garden Plot defines tax protesters, militia groups, religious cults, and general anti-government dissenters as disruptive elements. This calls for deadly force to be used against any extremist or dissident perpetrating any and all forms of civil disorder. Under Section D, a presidential executive order will authorize and direct the Secretary of Defense to use the armed forces of the United States to restore order by any means necessary. This is what we may have to look forward to in the months ahead and years to come, unless we can find some way to regain control over our runaway government. The government has made no secret of its plans. It's chilling to think about, but it's not surprising. In many ways, this is just more of the same heavy-handed tactics we've been seeing in recent years, but with one major difference. This COVID-19 state of emergency has invested government officials and those who view their lives as more valuable than ours with a sanctimonious, self-righteous, arrogant, big brother knows best approach to top-down governing, and the fallout can be seen far and wide. It's an ugly, self-serving mindset that views the needs, lives, and rights of we the people as insignificant when compared to those in power. It's sad to think that if you want to defend your rights, there's a makeshift camp waiting to be used. At the moment, there's a row of RVs kept in a remote area of Washington state. Nearby is a secret airstrip which is perfect for transferring the sick and those who do not wish to participate in the new normal.
So yeah, folks, it's a pretty drastic sort of a future we're heading into. As I said, the borders between Queensland and New South Wales here are still closed. They've opened up a lot of borders here in Australia. They're relaxing the lockdown a lot, but they're still putting the social distancing in place, all preparing for the second wave, of course. And the second wave, you've got to understand, when you look at Event 201, this is an exercise. The whole thing is an exercise. The second wave very likely may be the release of some pathogen. Perhaps they'll spray it from the skies. Perhaps it could be anything that they're going to do. I would suspect a lot of the people who are getting tested maybe possibly have, contracted something. People who've had flu shots, But it's all about the vaccinations. They want to get us into that grid, and it's about complete isolation from here on in. They want people breeding, like I said on the last report, they've outlawed sex with anyone outside your household in the UK. That's an interesting thing to be doing. They want people isolated. What they're doing here as well, the schools have gone back. And with the schools going back, what this is really about, you've got to understand, like I said, this is an exercise that they're running. And with the schools going back, what they're really doing here, what they're engaged in is data collection. Whoops, wrong way. Data collection. The kids going back to school now, school's been back for a few weeks and it's got like 6 weeks left to go or something. For 70 minutes at the end of every day in New South Wales schools here, they're getting the kids to go through what they're calling the COVID project. And the kids have to write essays on what it was like at home, how they felt during the lockdown, how their parents reacted. They want to know all about the kids' parents, what they think about it, what the kids think about it, whether they enjoyed the Google Classrooms. So it's all data collection. They want to get the kids to tell them, and they're making them act it out. They even want some kids to do school plays at the end of the semester, based on what it was like at home during the lockdown. So they want to know what everybody's families were thinking. They want to know how the kids handled it. They wanted to know how they liked the online schooling, what they think of social distancing. It's all data collection, because they need all this for the second wave so they can figure out how to play it a little bit better. They're gauging the reaction that they got, the amount of pushback that they got, which, it took a while for people to start pushing back, so they didn't really get a lot. But they're doing all that now. They're gauging all this and getting all the data collection happening now. So it's important to see how they're running this, folks. It is an exercise. And, there's a lot of people complaining about it, a lot of people pushing back. There's been a guy who's said bringing common law back into it, Magna Carta. He said he's put the British Crown on notice, and that gives them till June 23rd. And after June 23rd, we have the legal right for lawful rebellion. There's a lot of people pushing that here as well. It's even just ordinary Australians speaking out about this and saying the government needs to be dissolved, because, in fact, the death rate for COVID-19 by the Australian government's own estimations and own records is actually 162 times lower than the death rate for the common seasonal flu.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Australians. As you know, recently, the Australian government has destroyed our economy and failed the Australian people, causing untold personal, economic, and psychological and physical suffering to all Australians for absolutely no reason. For a so-called flu-like disease, COVID-19, which with today's statistics from the Australian Government Health Department itself show that this so-called COVID-19 is 162 times less deadly. I repeat, 162 times less deadly than the common flu. This is a shocking revelation, highlighting the total incompetence of this Australian government and the fascist, draconian, idiotic, ill and unconsidered overreaction based on the Chinese model enacted by the fascist communist Chinese government in Wuhan, China, which is considered the most polluted place on planet Earth.
And for this death rate of 162 times lower than the seasonal flu, they have shut down our entire country. As you can see, many people are calling it an overreaction, but it isn't an overreaction, it's a planned reaction. People have to understand this. It's not about the virus. The virus was simply the trigger they needed to bring the lockdown into place. It's the lockdown that they wanted. The lockdown was always going to happen. They just had to figure out how to make it happen. They want to create a welfare state. They want to shut down the supply chains. They want to control people, folks, through crisis, and this is the best way to do it, through a medical crisis. When you look at some of the laws that have been brought in the United States and in this country as well, the steps the governments claim they can take in a medical emergency in order to protect other people, they can do just about anything, and you will be considered a danger to society if you don't comply. If you don't have your vaccination, they can take control of your body, alive or dead, whatever. It's all in their rubbish that they write down on paper and dare to call law. And they're doing that under the guise of a pandemic. All they've got to do is get the people to believe that the pandemic is real. And that's kind of what they've done with the media. Yeah, the peacocks and the chickens come to visit. I don't know whether you can see them there, might be a little bit dark. There we go. Maybe they're coming into view. But yeah, there is a lot of pushback, folks, you know. Ordinary Australians saying that we need to dissolve the government, and that's what we need to do, whether it's through lawful rebellion. I mean, this might be a way if we can get enough people to understand how it works and get enough people to see that this is a scam. You know, everything they're doing is a scam, folks, and like I said, there's so much happening. I mean, I could bring you a report, you know, 2 or 3 times a day. It's ridiculous. And I've got so much to do. I've got so many emails to get through. I'm supposed to be preparing a presentation for Spain that they need to have last week, which I haven't even finished yet. So I've just got so much to do, folks. It's ridiculous. And I'm trying to stay on top of things and bring you information that I think you need to have as well. But look, Jeff Berwick's been knocking it out of the park with his reports. He's been doing some great reports. So has Brian from High Impact Flicks. I urge you to look at these reports. I also urge you to look, and I've mentioned it before, to James Corbett's documentary on Bill Gates. It's actually in 4 parts on YouTube, or you might actually be able to get the whole thing in 1 part somewhere. But it's really, really good, and it needs to be shared by people. There's been a huge pushback. You know, like I said, even here in Australia, by the government's own figures, it's 162 times lower than the seasonal flu, the death rate of this so-called virus. Sorry, folks, just picking things up. 162 times lower than the seasonal flu. I mean, that's pretty out of control when you think what they've done to, you know, to the country. Even if you're someone who believes the official narrative and believes that, you know, what they've done is good, even if you believe in the government, you believe in the pandemic, you believe the coronavirus is real. Well, you know, it's not that bad, folks. If the death rate is 162 times less than the seasonal flu, I can't see how anyone can see this country being locked down as being justified, even if you support the government. And frankly, I don't. I think they planned this whole thing from the beginning. But you know, I'll tell you folks, if you're in the United States, when you look at how this tracing program's going to work, people are going to end up in quarantine over and over again. I mean, you could be cleared, you could end up in quarantine for 2 weeks, then be cleared, then go to the supermarket, then end up back in quarantine because you went to the supermarket. So they're putting it into a situation where, you know, the only safe place you're going to be where you won't be in quarantine is to stay home, which is what they want you to do if you're in quarantine. So they're creating a win-win situation for themselves where they just basically get the world and everybody else has to stay inside. That's where they're heading with this, folks. And if you do want to go outside, you've got to be vaccinated. And if you're vaccinated, well, what are they putting in the vaccines? What, this neural mesh, this hydrogel? Where are they going with this, folks? We've got to understand that this is a scam. The whole thing's been a scam. Trump, everything he's done under the guise of protecting people, Trump has been a patriot stabilization program, a patriot pacification program. His whole approach has been to keep all the patriots sitting there doing nothing, believing that Trump's on your side. And there's people out there still that are saying, oh, this is the deep state doing this. You know, Trump's in there battling for us. You know, you're all in lockdown. He's just put the country under martial law. He's, you know, firing on peaceful protesters, even attacking news crews and all sorts of stuff, just to show you how serious this is. I mean, police marching past, shooting paint bombs at people and all the stuff they're doing. You seriously reckon this is still about taking down the deep state and rescuing the children from the sewers in New York? I mean, some of the disinformation that's been out there, folks, is profound. But, you know, this isn't going to go away. I'll be surprised if there's an election later in the year. I really will. I mean, I can't see how I don't even, you know, America's changed now. America's not going back to what it was. You know, these internment camps in Washington State, the stuff they're doing, you know, if you're living in the United States, you know, I think it might be a good time to think about moving. If it's, you know, even if you're able to do that anymore. But it's certainly going to hell in a handbasket pretty quickly. It just is. And I don't know how it's going to recover. I really don't. I don't know how, you know, if people don't wake up to what's happening and wake up to how they're being played, wake up to how this whole focus has been flipped with these so-called race riots. It's not about race. It's not about George Floyd. This was staged, so that's where the focus would be. They just flipped the focus away from COVID-19. But like I said, they're still rolling it out. They're still rolling out all this contact tracing. And think how many people they're going to be able to trace their contacts now. They've been out riding around the streets. Everyone's been so close together. I bet they've all had their cell phones on them. So they can track them with GPS. They're going to be able to lock so many people up with what's coming, folks. Things are going to get so crazy that, you haven't seen anything yet. And they're going to bring out the second wave. You watch. They'll bring out the second wave. And they're saying, well, it's not mandatory to have the contact tracing app, but you won't be able to get into any shops or do anything because we're mandating that they can't let anybody in. You've got to scan your QR code or whatever before you walk into supermarkets. That's the way they'll play it. So, yeah, pay attention, folks. Don't get distracted. Don't think that these riots have anything to do with George Floyd. Those that are protesting the death of George Floyd don't need to go and smash up shops. They don't need to burn cars. They don't need to do any of that sort of stuff. They don't need to destroy private property. They certainly don't need to be leaving pallets of bricks all around the place. And when you see how the police are reacting and how they're treating the people and how they're not treating the people, when they're not stepping in and stopping people, actually stopping real crime, being filmed, dropping pallets of bricks off, yeah. It's a scam, folks. You're being set up, As I've often said, that the best thing we could do is non-compliance. You don't need to occupy the streets. You just need to occupy yourself. Occupy yourself and you'll change the world in a day. If we could just see what a scam all this is and how contrived all this is and what a setup it's been. That speech that Trump made, he's literally going to invoke the Insurrection Act with that speech that he made. The Insurrection Act gives them an ability to basically arrest anyone they suspect of terrorism. And with the statements that he's made, any protester will be seen to be a terrorist. Under this legislation, if you don't submit to a test or a vaccination, if you simply don't comply because there's a health emergency, what they're calling a health emergency, you could be seen as a terrorist under this, and you'll simply be taken away to one of those camps in, like that one that Clive Lewis was showing us out in Washington State. A lot of people wondered what the FEMA camps were for, folks, and who was going to go in the FEMA camps. Well, now we know. Pay attention, folks. Stay positive. Start supporting the people around you. And as I said, folks, if you've got any way of getting out of the United States, I think now would be a good time. Because I cannot see how this is going to return to normal in any way. It's never going to go back to the way it was, that's for sure. It certainly wasn't really normal to begin with, was it? But there was some semblance of freedom. But I can't see how that is going to return with this whole fake pandemic. It's been quite a clever move, and they've virtually planned for every contingency. And when you see the way they're flipping the attention now onto these race riots and creating every means they need to put the military onto the street under the guise of protecting people and quelling dissent against the police, and the police are just pushing for more and more dissent. The way they're treating the news crews. You don't get that on television if they don't want the people to see it. They don't go and attack a camera crew if they don't want people to see it. They want you to think the police are completely heartless, that they're completely against you because they want you to fight back. They want you to smash up the infrastructure. They want you to make every city into a dangerous place. So you won't get the food trucks coming and you won't have any way to ever be able to turn things back to normal, and you'll be completely at the mercy of the state. So be careful how you're being played, folks. Well, I'm about to run out of battery, so I'm going to have to leave it there, but I'll bring you another report maybe later today or tomorrow, because like I said, there's so much news going on. Every time you record one of these and upload it, by the time you upload it, it's old news. It's happening that fast. And I've got a lot more I want to talk about. So I'll come back either later on or tomorrow and talk some more. I'd still like to get this Harry Vox video uploaded, this conversation we had the other day, but I've had some audio problems with it, so I'll see what I can do to fix that. And I'll get back to you on that. But I'll talk to you again soon, folks. Please take very good care until then. And like I said, folks, do not fall for the scam. Do not think that, you know, it's all about race. Do not think that this is about George Floyd, because it isn't. It's about martial law. It's about them doing exactly what they want to do. So be careful, folks. But I'll talk soon, okay? I think I've gone a little dark. I think I've gone out of the light. But we'll talk soon, folks, and please take very good care until then. In Lakesh.
Yeah, it's enough already. We gotta bring them home. It's enough already. We gotta bring them home. Johnny Black. No more war in my name, no. Ain't no politician angel with a halo. They know they ruining the planet like children with matches. It's madness, but damn it, masses need to wake up and stop the killing of the innocents. Military strikes with drones on homes of civilians. Millions dead from fraudulent wars. And nobody's stopping them. You watching the apocalypse. It's time for you to stop this shit. Poison the planet for the money they make. Man, I hate it in this matrix and their secret handshakes. Deals with the devil, hell you voted them in. Hoping they win till they sending some drums to your kids. While you're opening lids to your cokes and your chips. Exposed to GMOs until you're choking, you're sick. They hoping nobody notices this, but I am a rebel, a renegade, a fighter and a truther. No lies, we will rise for the lives of the future. Johnny Black. Enough already. We gotta bring them home. It's enough already. We gotta bring them home.
Stop the hate and the violence. Let your weapons fall silent. What we do to each other, can't you see it's wrong? So ask yourself, just who am I? If I were you, would I wanna die? Why, oh why can't we just give peace a chance?
What is it good for? You know it's not the answer, so why resort to violence in the name of peace? Is it just an excuse for you to cut the leash? Set your dogs off, war on those you despise. All around the world there is a war on life, but you know the one thing's for sure. There ain't no fucking way that I approve this war. This planet's got a long way to go. 1,000 years of culture, but with nothing to show except a better way to kill. Designed by corporations who are in it for the thrill. Cause war these days is big business. Another form of profit for the global elite. So perpetuating the violence keeps the cash flowing there on easy street. Cause life is cheap when you're in their seat. Preying on the lives of the poor and the weak. While I pay $2 just to save them. We make it killing when it's all guns are blazing. All the planes and the tanks and the guns and the bombs. Pretty damn sure that they're doing it wrong. Ain't no way the world has got a chance. When you talk about peace down the barrel of a gun, see war is rife and they feed on strife. Always coming at you with the gun or the knife, but the brother line you up and pull the trigger. It's just another puppet of a brother who is bigger. Understand, I'm not just talking about the USA. There's a noble undertaking to the words I say. Cause it's just another puppet at the end of the day. Another one of many in this world of hate. So don't get me wrong, cause the world ain't easy. We all got our differences plain to see. But instead of taking time to talk it through, you just pull another trigger. What's your problem? Cease another man deceased, another orphan child. All of them are victims in this world gone wild. So I gotta say my piece and let my voice be heard. Educate the people to the truth I've learned. Cause war's not the answer, it's part of the disease. When we fight each other, only ones who are pleased are the ones who make a profit from our pain. As they sit behind their walls, all immune to the rain. So I'm sending out my message to the people. Say no to war, put an end to all this evil. If we all stand together so the world can see, we can all live together, let our souls be free. So Asia, stop the war. You know that killing others is a thing I abhor. Africa, stop the war. You are all brothers, so what the fuck you fighting for? for South America. Stop the violence, killing over drugs, it doesn't make no sense in USA. Stop the hate and the anger, put away your guns and we can all live together. Hey, that's what I say. Say no to war, not in my name.
Stop the hate and the violence. Let your weapons fall silent. What we do to each other, can't you see it's wrong? Can't you see it's wrong? So ask yourself, just who am I? Who am I? How are you? Would I wanna die? Why can't we just give peace a chance? Give peace a chance. Stop the hate and the violence. Let your weapons fall silent. What we do to each other, can't you see it's wrong? Can't you see it's wrong? So ask yourself, just who am I? Who am I? How are you? Would I wanna die? Why can't we just give peace a chance? Give peace a chance.